Welcome everyone to a call for judgment. I wanted to do a video on this story involving a murder. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it. It's pumped through the mainstream. And obviously there's so many stories, murder stories, crime stories that people are so fascinated to hear about. It's glorified in our society. Serial killers who are CIA operatives are glorified in our society. Again, this is a lot to do with not just kind of promoting this behavior and making people kind of like these types of people, making them idols in a sense, because it's scary that people actually idolize these people, but also it makes you always look for the boogeyman in the wrong places, when the real boogeyman would be the intelligence agencies around the world. They're the ones who actually create Manchurian candidates. They're the ones who mind control, who have the ability to mind control people into mind controlled soldiers. This has to do, obviously we see stuff, and I've heard stuff about the Black Awakening and all these other things involving super soldiers, but I want to talk about this story. You may have heard about it, about Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell. It's one of the sickest stories you'll ever hear. Now, I would believe 100% it's a true story. I'm not covering this to say it's a psyop or it's fake. I'm covering it so that you can see how the media works, because it's just really unbelievable. Chad Daybell, of course, is a follower of Christ, apparently, supposedly. And so is Lori, and the media loves this type of story. Not because they can glorify murder and, sickness in this world, but because they can, on top of glorifying it, start talking about how crazy Christians are. These two fit the cake perfectly. Now, you've probably seen people like this all over YouTube, because there's tons of people out there who claim to be prophets. There's people on YouTube who claim to be the two witnesses. There's people on YouTube who claim to be you name it. There's people on YouTube who claim to be Jesus for the most part. So there are people out there who obviously, I don't understand how other Christians follow them and actually believe them when they sit on here as if a prophet would be, coming to YouTube, and at the very least wouldn't even be censored on YouTube, but let alone that's where they're, doing this stuff. There's Christians, obviously a lot of Christians fall for these types of things, or people who are getting vision. That's one of the most common ones. Visions from God. They can name the date of the, rapture, or name the date of the second coming. Over and over and over, we see this stuff with Christians, and the media loves this. And the media is taking this trial, which, if you don't know, the story is that Lori Daybell clearly murdered many people with her brother, who apparently they had an incestual relationship, but she had her husband whacked and then left her for this preacher named Chad Daybell, who then he killed his wife, and Lori killed her two children, dismembered them, some of the sickest crap you'll ever hear. Of course, that's because they're getting messages from God, and of course, quote, God would command them of these things. Now, many Christians fall for these types of deceptions based on some of the stories in the Old Testament, and they think that it's actually happening in today's world and don't realize that through the blood of Christ we're saved, that God does not ask these things of people. But these are clearly mentally unhealthy people, and I'm going to show you these clips how the mainstream media is promoting this.
Let's talk about their beliefs, Chad and Lori's, their doomsday cult following, all of their religious beliefs. It is quite a tale, and prosecutors believe that their obsession with the end of the world and with each other, and these visions that Chad and Lori both claim they had, were at the core of this murder investigation. Take a look.
We're gathering together as saints, as brothers and sisters, and preparing for the second coming of Christ. We want to be there together, and we want to be there strong together.
That's Lori Vallow on a podcast in November of 2018 discussing the end of times. A few months later, this is what Lori's now dead husband Charles told police in Arizona about how Lori's religious beliefs had become disturbingly extreme.
Her religious stuff is gone way off the deep. She threatened me physically. She made threats at the kitchen. I don't care what happens to her. Come get him. I don't care. We won't hear that much longer anyway. And I've got my God powers. I can kill if I want, anytime I want. It's just irrational stuff. Yeah. She needs some serious help. I want her to get help. I'm worried about her.
Both Lori and Chad told friends and family that they are part of the 144,000, which is a biblical reference from the book of Revelation.
The book of Revelation has a chapter in which it talks about how when Jesus comes back to the earth, or in anticipation of that, then there will be 12,000 elders or members from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so when you do 12 times 12,000, that's how you get to 144,000.
According to friends, Chad believes that he and Lori are not only part of the 144,000, but that it's up to them to lead the other chosen ones after the second coming of Christ.
I've recently released my autobiography entitled Living on the Edge of Heaven, where I tell more about my 2 near-death experiences.
That's Chad Daybell talking about his books on a website called Preparing a People. The video has been removed. In his books, Daybell claims that near-death experiences, the first when he was a teenager diving off a cliff, gives him the unique ability for visions, a sixth sense of events that will happen or are about to happen. According to his friends, Chad had visions that his wife Tammy was going to die, that Charles Vallow's body had been taken over by a zombie, and that Lori's children, 7-year-old JJ and 16-year-old Tylee, were also zombies. Chad, according to friends, also believes that he's had many previous lives and has even been married to Lori in past lives on different planets. Chad told his friend Julie Rowe he was James the Less, or James the Just, one of the 12 apostles.
He started telling me about how he had an attack. He was in his living room in Rexburg, Idaho. The way he described it was that his veil was more open than it had been, and he started remembering some of his past lives.
How and why Chad and Lori's religious views became so extreme is unclear. Friends of both say something changed.
Chad's been a very prolific author, so in the past I would say a lot of his publications are very much in the mainstream, but it does seem that recently their trajectory seems to be taking them away from the kind of center where most people in the faith would have.
All right, let's talk more about all of this religious mumbo-jumbo.
And so he recorded about 9 conversations for the FBI over a period of about 2 weeks. On one of those recordings, this is just so bizarre, but Alex and Zulema are on this, as well as Lori, Chad, and Melanie Pulowski. Alex was not feeling well, so Lori said that she cast Satan out of his body, rolled Satan up like a taco, and shipped him off to Antarctica. Now, I have tacos for lunch right here. If you need a demonstration, I got you covered.
I don't know. I think I've just lost my appetite for tacos. And so, these are just bizarre conversations, and yet they seem to unfold as if it's just, hey, what'd you have for lunch?
Because this fits the bill perfectly. I've been talking about Christian persecution, but what goes along with that is making Christians look like completely insane people. And these two are going to be pushed in the mainstream, not just because of the crimes they committed, because of the things that they say, which are completely insane as in regards to how their faith, how they view their faith, right? This guy thinks that he was James the Less in a past life and that he was with her in a past life. All these types of things, the past lives and this new ageism, but it's all just working perfectly for media. Listen to how the media has covered this story and how they just completely, make fun of Christians, which is exactly what they want to do. And they want people out there to see it and to think that Christianity is insane, and that anybody who's studying the end times or the book of Revelation are pretty much like these people, what they labeled a doomsday cult. So this fits perfectly for them, for all the agendas that I've covered over the years, specifically in the last couple of months, with how they want to label and portray Christians. The end time stuff, talking about the end time stuff, they want that stuff to be looked at as completely insane stuff. So this fits perfect for them. So any of us who are out there talking about the end times, comparing things that are actually happening in our society, whether it's, the famines and wars and the things that are coming, the rumors of wars, I should say. A lot of us talk about this stuff, point this stuff out about wicked people in high places, all these things that are covered in Scripture. They want us lumped in with insane people like this. And you might say, well, I don't understand how the two connect. Well, when they start pumping this type of stuff over and over and over again, and it's getting millions of views because people are very fascinated by this story, because nobody can really nobody can really see how a mother could kill her 2 children, how sick you have to be in the head, and then claim to be a Christian on top of it. So it makes us all look not just crazy, but it makes us look hypocritical. It makes us look like, we could do what we want and we're forgiven for our sins, so we can go and commit murder. And, it's unbelievable. It fits in perfectly. This story's getting pushed all over the place. And on top of it, The second clip you heard, where it's not just the first clip where this guy is, he's preaching out there and he's got a following, but the second clip is just as disturbing, right? For us who are trying to push the truth and expose Satanism, et cetera, is how it's, I folded Satan up into a taco and shipped him off to Alaska, right? Quotes like that. So then they come back and look how the TV anchors handle it, right? Insane Christians, mumbo jumbo. Oh my gosh, how can people listen to this type of crap? So it fits perfectly for the media and how they want to cover Christianity. So this story isn't just being glorified and pushed because of the tragedy of it and the insanity of it, because there's a lot of murder stories out there right now that can be pushed. It's being pushed because they love this narrative of crazy Christians who believe in end times prophecies. So then they can name this whole thing the doomsday cult, and people who look too deep into the book of Revelation or into the end times need mental help and should be institutionalized. That's where these types of narratives go. You have to watch when you see this stuff, why they even cover it the way that they cover it. Right? Why this story is being promoted more than any of the other stories that are currently going on, because there's always some type of story out there that you can cover. That's what I try to talk about, especially on the website, talking about why something is in the mainstream, right? Because events occur every day all around the world. Now, most of them we know are staged, but even when real events occur, why do they pick that event to posterize and blast out there, right? How about the sickening event that occurred in Oklahoma? Right? How about that? That didn't get an extreme amount of mainstream attention. It got a little bit of the guy. If you didn't hear, the guy, killed his wife and her kids, then killed 2 other teenagers who were missing. He shot them all. Well, for starters, it didn't fit a narrative. Why didn't it fit a narrative? Well, because for starters, he was a, child offender who was let out of prison and then went again and, was committing the same types of crimes. Well, because he used a shotgun for starters. He didn't use something that you call an assault, right? So that doesn't fit the narrative. And then secondly, there's no race involved. It's a white-on-white crime, so you can't call into that, right? So the headlines for about 12 hours until, of course, they had an event which clearly looks like a staged event that they created in Atlanta, where they could say, "Oh, look. You should be afraid to walk the streets of Atlanta." Somebody with no motive is, we know when we see the narratives, what they're trying to push, because the narratives are always the same, right? So here, I'm not saying that this isn't a story like, it's not interesting or anything like that. They're just beating it to death because they want to completely use this narrative of how Christians are, lump us in with insane people like this who clearly aren't Christians, because Christians would never do an appalling act like that. A guy kills his wife, right, to be with this woman. She kills her kids. All right, how about you divorce your wife for starters, right? I don't think God would ask you to murder her, but they believe they're hearing voices and things like that, right? So when they can hear and use narratives like that, oh, Christians hear voices, they claim to hear voices, they're really hearing voices in their head, and then they go and commit heinous crimes like this, they love it. They drool over it. They'll do whatever they can to line up to get this out and blast this out onto everyone's television all around the world. And everyone's phone all around the world. And people look at it, they're like, whoa, what? How sick can you be? This woman did what to her kids? She didn't just kill her, she just membered her kids? Oh, and what happened? Oh, they were a doomsday cult. That's how this whole story started, right? She listened to him preach. They were into end times prophecies. They believe that they met another life. They believe that there's some types of prophets here, that she has some type of power to kill if she wants to kill and get away with it, and all this type of stuff. Right? So you see how Court TV and all these, outlets out there who are specifically covering the trial handle it. They laugh it off. They say, man, these kind of crazy, these people, right? And of course these people are crazy. These people are insane. These people are sick. But to even bring Christianity into it, to act like these are real Christians, is ridiculous. But we know what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to lump Christians into this group of people who are mentally unhealthy. They think the government's bad. They think there's wicked people out there. They believe that Satan is real and walking amongst us, and they can roll him into a taco and throw him out. They believe, that witches actually exist. And that's why someone like myself constantly goes through all the things that I go through with trying to speak. It's because I don't run around rambling. I'm not telling you like I'm claiming to be a prophet. I'm showing you what they show us, and then showing you patterns. Because that's how mind control works. That's how these operations work. They're psychological. They use repetition. They use pattern. There's messaging behind all this stuff. Then I show you the constant repetition that the artists use, the musicians, the movies. We see witches and Satan glorified over and over and over. And the more I show it to you, the more you start to, people out there who don't believe start to say, yeah, there is something to this. They are talking about this an awful lot. And then it unlocks their mind in actually realizing that they've been trapped inside of a fictional reality that that these people create to try to keep you separated from God, separated from truth. But anyway, I wanted to cover this story because I saw this. It was recommended to me. I clicked and I watched the clip. And I'm like, of course they do this narrative. Of course, because look how the guys are laughing it off and they're just like crazy religious, people. And, Christian would do this to their own family. And, now she's rolling Satan up into a taco. It's all stuff that makes children and the youth out there look at places or organizations like the Satanic Temple as sane and normal because they're like, look, they're caring and look at Christians out there because that's how we're betrayed. Whenever there's a negative story about Christians, the media will pump that out because that's how they need to and want to portray us so that the youth out there can continue to get herded into this do what thou wilt satanic mindset. So that's what they're doing with this whole situation. Obviously, the situation is horrible. It's disgusting. And nobody even wants, I don't even know how people could sit through, listen to this stuff over and over again. It's just, it's depressing enough to go through the stuff, I guess, that we all talk about and look at with what they're trying to do to this world. But these types of things are just horrifying. And of course, they'll glorify it because that's what they do. They glorify this type of stuff. They plant seeds in people's heads. They constantly put the same documentaries out there about Dahmer and all these people. And they condition people over and over. I mean, how many documentaries do you need to see on Jeffrey Dahmer? They're like, oh, Netflix has a new documentary on Jeffrey Dahmer, a new series. How many times? There's like 8,000 of them, right? They just constantly want to remind people and tell people about it, plant seeds in people's minds about it, make people think the boogeyman is their next door neighbor and not Big Brother. It's really easy to see. And most of these people, again, are CIA agents. A lot of them Manchurian candidates. It goes back to, Bundy. I've covered, a majority of them, right? They've gone through the CIA and have links. Jim Jones, Jonestown, the Kool-Aid, crazy Christian preacher, brings people to another country, kills them all, has them drink Kool-Aid, has mind control over them, that he's actually able to get them to drink Kool-Aid and give it to their kids too, their infant children, when in reality they were all inoculated. Military was there. The military down in Ghana talked about it. They were literally inoculating them, but that story doesn't fit the narrative, right? Christians have to be portrayed as completely insane in this world so that more people turn away from God and young people out there don't seek God. It's really sad and sickening to see. I thank everyone for being here. Hope you're doing well. God bless you and your families.